All right, welcome back. Let's welcome in Coach Rodriguez. He is the O-line coach, and I believe the run game coordinator too at Akron, University of Akron. See, I got screwed it up. I don't know why I want to say the school name first, but the University of Akron in Ohio. Coach,
Yes,
thanks for
that's
being here so early in the morning with me.
we're good. Thanks for being here. And probably like most coaches, I'm an early bird, so I'm usually way more productive before 9 a.m. than I am after 9 a.m. So I'm happy to be on.
Yeah, good thing I checked my email when you emailed me. I was like, oh yeah, okay, because I have a fancy iPhone, but for some reason it doesn't alert my emails, so I'm always just checking them. So
Oh, what a pain!
I don't know why it's the brand new one. Whatever. Me and
Yeah,
technology just don't get along all the time. Why it doesn't alert me, I don't know. So I always check it. I check it like
yeah,
3 times an hour just to make sure. So the first I did this morning, I was like, let me just check. Oh, all right.
yeah.
Well, I gotta get up. It's my day. This is my full day off. We have no
Mm,
camp, no nothing. So this is
yeah.
it's fine. And you think I could sleep in, but your body wakes you up because you're
You
so
can't. It's physically impossible. Yeah. My wife gets mad at me all the time. I'm like, I'm sorry. I just, what do we do?
right. Like sleeping in is like 6 or 7 a.m. and you're like, oh, well, I'm up.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, thanks for being here, Coach. I like to start off a little bit with how you got to Akron because you were just at FIU, I believe,
hmm
beforehand.
hmm
And like we were just talking a little bit, now you made the jump from nice warm weather, humid weather to Akron, which is in Ohio, where you might get snow. So,
Yeah.
so how did you end up getting to Akron or even to FIU? I think even Coach Siasi told me to get you on here last year. I talked to him before. I
He's
think
awesome.
he's
Yeah.
like, you got to get him on sometime. And so that's why you were on my list.
Yeah.
So like, I know you've been around different parts of the country coaching. So like, how did that all come about to get to Akron?
Yeah. Well, like most things in this profession, it's as much who you know sometimes, right? As there's an old saying, kind of who you know gets you in the door, and what you know keeps you in the building, right?
Mhm.
So we're part of a whole new coaching staff at Akron. They got hired really December to January. Joe Moorhead is the new head coach here. Now, Coach Moorhead had been an assistant at Akron prior to, from I think '05 or '04 to '09.
Okay.
He was the receiver coach and became the coordinator under JD Brookhart. And then Joe's obviously had a ton of success since then at a bunch of places as a head coach and a coordinator. So I was actually Coach Moorhead's first offensive line coach when he took his first head coaching job at Fordham, which
Okay.
is an FCS school in New York City, right in the Patriot League. So that was 2012 until 2015. Joe and I were together at Fordham. And it was honestly, to this day, it's probably the most fun I've ever had coaching college football. And a lot of that's because of Joe, right? He's a phenomenal human being. He's a great dad. He's a really good football coach. I tell people this all the time in this profession, he's like a pink unicorn because you you're going to be successful. You're going to win games. He knows what he's doing. He has an identity. He doesn't deviate from that very much. But on top of all that, he's just an outstanding human being, right? And a really, really good guy to work for, and truly a friend of mine. So when we left Fordham in 2015, I went to Miami. He went to Penn State. We've not worked together since then, but we've stayed really good friends. Probably texting, off season, maybe once a week. In season, not as often, obviously, because you're busy, right?
Mhm.
But we've always stayed in touch. So when he was in the process of getting this opportunity and kind of reached out to me to gauge my interest, I was like, well, FIU was going through coaching change. I had the opportunity to possibly stay on staff there. That was home. That was very appealing. But when this thing became a reality, I could not, in good faith, knowing Joe, what he stands for, what good person he is, and everything that he told me that was going to happen, that he had plans for Akron, I was like, I want to be a part of that, So that's kind of how it all kind of happened.
Yeah. I was talking to a coach the other day. It's crazy. If you keep in contact with people, it's who you know again, but it comes full circle of getting you a job or like helping you get where you need to go. If you keep relationships, like you don't burn bridges, which we all probably have, but you try to keep coaches, this group together because
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one thing. And anybody from a recruiting standpoint who's visited or been around Akron since we got there in January, because Joe's been very open and forthright about this whole process. Like, he had his most recent head coaching opportunity was in 2018 and 19. He was the head coach of Mississippi State in the SEC, which in hindsight has as many wins as any coach in school history in the first 2 years, had more wins in his 2 years than the current coach had his first 2 years, right? But from a cultural fit, it wasn't a good fit, right? I mean, Joe's a Midwestern Pittsburgh guy, has spent his whole time coaching really in that part of the country, and then going to Mississippi State was a little bit different. But one of the things that Joe talked about in terms of like, hey, do I want to be head coach? You're going to be, if that happens, what are some of the things that have to be in place for me to take that opportunity? And one of the most important things was, the ability to hire the staff that he wanted, right? Guys that he knew, guys that he trusted, because so much of this profession, hey, we're in a staff meeting and everyone says, yeah, we're on board. Then you break off and talk to your kids, or you break off and talk to your side of the ball or your small group. And you never know for sure if that message is being carried through the way with the same vigor that the head coach would, So he wanted to make sure he surrounded himself with guys that he did not have to worry about, where their allegiances lied, whether, how trustworthy they were, how good of people they were. So it's really cool because literally every single person on our staff, except for maybe one, has worked with, played for, somewhere on the line, Coach Moorhead in the last, 15 years or so.
Right.
And our D coordinator is the one that probably hasn't worked with them, but they've coached against each other, on in the Big Ten and out west in the Pac-12. So it's just really cool because everyone kind of, although we didn't all know each other because we all worked for them in different places, there is it was a very easy kind of like transition of coming together, because it was almost like, well, if Joe stamps you, then I know you're good, so I'm going to trust you almost inherently, right? Which is awesome.
Yeah, because you guys going to Akron, Akron, has been up and down, bringing all you guys together, because now it's like you're inputting your culture on it. So if you all know Coach Moorhead or anything like that, it seems like you just said, easy transition to come in. You're trying to build that culture, put your guys' culture in there, to turn it around, because it has been up and down.
Yep.
But it's also exciting to do that, because I've been a part of that high school level. You try to build that back up. It is exciting to jump into that and do that. And, so like when you got there, what kind of culture changes have you trying to build up there to try during the summer? Because summer is different than the season, but you have to, like, day one, hit the ground running. So like, what kind of culture things do you guys all talk about to bring that back up?
Yeah. Well, it started back in January when we first got there, and when the kids first came back on campus, obviously. And honestly, from a culture, from a building your culture standpoint, that time from January, the first semester, right? That winter, spring semester is the most important time, in my opinion, of a new staff's transition, because no matter how well you recruit, whether it's out of the portal or high school kids, whatever it is, the bulk of your production and the bulk of what you're going to rely on in the following fall is going to come from guys who you're inheriting, right? Guys who are already on your roster. So it's and you only get one chance to do it right the first time, right? So our culture is not necessarily. I mean, listen, there are some head coaches and staffs that preach that word and have a lot of really exotic ways to express it, right? Ours is pretty simple. Like, hey, like, do what you're supposed to do, when you're supposed to do it, how you're supposed to do it, and the manner should be done the best of your ability. Really simple, right? So if you have, for example, when we work out, right? So we have, obviously, and our strength staff is amazing. Coach Ben came from Pitt. He's a stud. He's been a head guy at Kansas and at Wyoming, and spent time at LSU and a bunch of places. So we have a dress of the day every day for the weight room, right? It might be, there's a gray t-shirt and there's a white t-shirt and a blue t-shirt. There's a blue pair of shorts, a black pair of shorts, or whatever it is, and a gold pair of shorts, or gray, or whatever it is. Hey, today we're wearing blue on gray or white on black, or whatever it is. Everyone is expected to wear the exact same shirt, the exact same shorts, the exact same socks, because we express our individuality, through conformity, right? That's just how we do things here. That is part of our culture, right?
Right.
So You can't, so don't expect to walk in wearing a blue shirt when it's a gray on gray day or whatever, and not to be addressed. Right now,
Right.
we don't have to call you names and berate you to just, hey, like, go change your damn shirt, and then when you come back in here, then we'll first of all, let's get that done right away, and then we'll worry about what the punishment or the whatever is for coming in wearing the wrong shirt in the first, or losing your shirt or whatever, right?
Right.
So something as simple as that. Being on time is important, right? Like, we have a schedule for a reason. So if we say that the lift starts at 6 a.m. or 8 a.m. or 9 a.m. or whatever it is, then it starts at that time, right? And if you're, what I think a little bit of what's happened with our culture as a whole, not Akron, is there's a certain leeway, right? Of like, well, I wasn't that late, right? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
hey, I know it's 6:01. Like, what's like, why is that a big deal? Well, because and you heard Coach say this over and over and over again. If it's not 100% right, it's 100% wrong, right? So if we say that the dress of the day is blue shirt, gray shorts, white socks, and black shoes, and you're wearing almost the person, but you have one white sock on as opposed to a black sock on, or you have the wrong pair of shoes on, well, then that's wrong, right? Because close only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades, right? You know what I mean? So
Right.
So that has been the biggest, I want to say challenge, because it really wasn't a challenge, but that's probably been the biggest. It seems like that was maybe one of the biggest differences, is the attention to detail and the I guess the vigilance of the details of being on time, being dressed the right way, being prepared, right? You know what I mean? And then not just for appointments to happen in our building, right? So we have a great academic support staff, we have tutors, we have mentors, and if you have an appointment because either you asked for it or you were assigned to it because you're struggling in a class, then being on time for that is as important as being on time for a practice or a meeting or a lift or whatnot, right? So again, just understand that everything matters, right? That the weight room doesn't matter more or less than your study hall or your finance class or the 7-on-7 or whatever it is. So, and in our reality, because of the portal, when we first got here, and mind you, I think they let the previous head coach go like around Halloween, and they didn't announce Coach Moorhead until a week or two before the holidays. So there was about a 2-month almost gap where there wasn't a true acting head coach in the building. And I give a lot of credit to the guys who were here in the interim basis who try to make it work, because I've been part of it before, and that's tough. It really, especially when you're losing, which they had. They were at that point, they were 1 in whatever. So a lot of kids went to the portal. So I think we might have lost close to 20 guys between scholarship and walk-on guys before we even got here. Right. You know what I mean? And in all reality, though, and I don't know those kids, I don't want to pass judgment upon them, but it sounds like they may have been guys that may have wanted to leave anyways once we got here because of what we're talking about, right? And then once we get here in January and the kids get back and we actually do establish a culture and start holding guys accountable and start, kind of practicing what we're preaching, then another probably, half dozen or some odd guys either couldn't handle it, didn't want to deal with it, or thought the pastures were greener somewhere else. So we lost some guys as far as that goes, which is fine. And then really there was a pretty good chunk of time from, I would say, maybe like mid-February until after spring ball, but we really didn't lose. At that point in time, you got spring ball coming up. Everyone's kind of excited about that. So there wasn't a bunch of exodus as far as that goes. And then there were maybe a small amount of guys that went to the portal after spring practice was over at the end of April. And that was guys that either, we were not going to bring back because we just were out of roster spots, or guys that maybe, I understand, like, hey, I was a starter or a contributor with the old staff, and now the new staff comes in here and I'm not, for whatever reason, right? The scheme changes, are not a fit anymore, whatever it is. So we did the math the other day. We pulled a roster off of like the last game they played last season, and it's close to 50 names that were on the roster at the end of last season that are no longer on the roster at the beginning of this season.
Wow.
And very few graduated. in all reality. It was a lot of guys that either, rendered themselves ineligible or chose to go play somewhere else or are trying to find, someone to play or something. But that is thank God for the portal, because you can replace some of those numbers, and not all young guys either, and have a chance to be competitive. Because if there wasn't for that, and we had to kind of eat that for 2-3 years and 2-3 cycles before we can replace those numbers, it would be detrimental to the program.
Right. That'd be, you would hate it every year. Like, oh my
Yeah.
God.
Yeah. And listen, I mean, like, I know we were very, very active in the portal this year. We had to be, right? Just I mentioned, when you lose, almost 50 guys off the roster, scholarship or walker, that's a lot of upheaval in the roster. I would hope to God, and I feel pretty strong in saying that we're not going to have that much, roster turnover going forward, because we're not going to have, coaching turnover and that kind of stuff. But at this point, the older guys who are still here have been through a spring ball, or some, like, they kind of know who we are, what we're about. They bought in, So I don't see there being a lot. Like, I don't think there's a lot of gray area in our program right now. Guys know what's expected of them. We know who our players are and what's expected of them, and we're in a pretty good rhythm as far as that goes right now.
Yeah, because that's difficult when you come in and you have new players. They got to buy in. If they don't, then they're going to go. But like you said, then you get the guys that are going to buy in and be there, which is better. Like you said, no offense to the kids that left.
Yeah.
But it's the same as a coaching staff. You rather have guys in there that buy into what you're going to do. Even like GAs, if you get an offensive line GA or whoever, like, they're going to buy into what you're doing. They're going to be all on board, and then it moves forward better. It's better to do that than you
Absolutely.
have the kids stay. You're going into the season, and then they go do their own thing, or they, whatever.
And that's been one of the biggest challenges with, because I mentioned the portal with us, with high school kids too, but with the portal especially, because, here's the issue that you run into. Okay, well, we're preaching, culture and, accountability and toughness and all that kind of stuff, to the guys we've inherited, right? Okay, to the guys who are already here, the guys who are still guys that stuck around. And now we have the ability to go and get, go and sign, transfers and or high school players that are from, a bunch of places, right? But now this is like, if you bring in a kid out of the portal or a high school kid or something who does not necessarily live up to that standard, you have essentially become a fraud to your team, right? Because you're saying, hey, we want guys who are tough, disciplined, accountable, good teammates, so on and so forth. And then you go and bring in a bunch of guys who are not that, right? And you're still preaching that stuff, in team meetings. You'll lose a team pretty quick doing that, because you're being a hypocrite, right? At the end of the day, you're being a fraud. With having to bring in this many new faces into the program, whether it be out of high school, junior college, or the portal, it's really challenged us to tap into our resources, man, and ask questions and do background and talk to people, at the high school level, at the previous school they worked at, other schools they played against, because, there's an old saying, you recruit your own problems, right? And that's very true. And that's true of a class of, 20 high school kids or whatever it is, that you have a whole year to kind of, do background checks on. But when you're doing that for, 15 high school kids and 20 kids out of the portal, or 25 kids out of the portal, whatever it may be, and some of those processes happen over the course of a week or two, right? Because it's everything's quicker now. Man, it puts a lot of onus on making sure you're asking the right questions to the right people, because you do not want to bring in more of the same in that regard.
And then hopefully it gets easier for you guys once you start establishing that. You'll still do all those background checks, but right now you're trying to do it like you said, you came in January, then you're like boom, boom, boom. Now you're going to be nice little, like, I don't know, like a nice straighter path, like right there. It's just kind of weaving and you're going
a little bit. Yeah. I think with transfers, I think there's always going to be that kind of, because especially when you're up against, it's almost like people understand, right? Like, if a guy's going to the portal, he understands, well, I'm going to wait until this point in time, so I don't get left up the cold, so I can enroll my new school almost immediately, right? So like right when you get to like when summer school starts in May, in January when the winter session starts, whatever, there's always like that kind of like mad scramble to get guys, Guys go in the portal, get a hold of them, figure out what's going on with them. We want to get into this process or not, and if so, and then get them enrolled in school. And we've had guys, and I give our recruiting staff and our operations staff and our admission staff credit. We've had guys that have been and then got in the portal, applied to school, had interest, which is awesome. Just that just goes to show kind of, the support we're getting from some of those other entities on campus.
Yeah, because going back way back to what you said at the beginning, if you have good people around you, good things happen. So and I think that's some things people don't see that, we obviously see the coaches, but then all the other support staff around that do all the hard work.
Absolutely.
Too. And it's great. I'm just going to jump around on questions here that I've thought of as you were talking, because I've talked to some coaches as you're recruiting, and I'm going to talk, I guess, specifically high school kids. People always talk about multi-sport athletes, and I'm talking to somebody like, when people hear multi-sport athletes, sometimes they're thinking of wide receivers or quarterbacks. And I say, well, about the O line and the D line, like they're multi-sport athletes.
Absolutely.
Is that a big thing you look for too? Like, did you play other sports, and how did that work for you?
Yes. So I mean, me personally, when I was a high school player, I was a 3-sport athlete in high school. So I played football, obviously. I played basketball, and I wrestled. The last two were kind of hard to juggle at times because they kind of run simultaneously.
Mm-hmm.
So I only had 1 year, which was, I think it was my junior year, my sophomore, I forget. One of those years in the middle where I actually did both. And I had to kind of pick, I was like wrestle one day, basketball one day, vice versa. And then eventually as I got older, I kind of didn't play as much basketball and stuck to more wrestling. But anyways, so we definitely put a premium on guys that do more things than just play football. So for us, like for example, like if we're a little bit different than some schools, and we can talk about it later on if we want to. Like we recruit two I say very different, but we have two different skill sets that we recruit to, whether you're an interior guy or a tackle. Okay, because to me, in our offense, their job descriptions are so different that you have to kind of accentuate different things within those prospects. So with that being said, for our tackle prospects, because they're going to be a little bit more, in space, right, against better athletes, they're going to be against smaller guys sometimes. We love guys that play basketball, right? Mm-hmm. Guys are, 4s and 5s that can move their feet, play man-to-man defense, cover guys in the perimeter, that kind of stuff. They just have a tendency to understand how to keep their weight within their framework, change direction, bouncing body control, all those things. So and not that we won't recruit a guard that plays basketball, but that is a bonus for us for a tackle prospect, a guy that plays basketball. If a guy wrestles as an I think wrestling is great because besides the fact that it's probably of all sports you can play, including football, it is probably the biggest developer of balance and body control, right? Mm-hmm. And body awareness. So if an interior prospect wrestles, that is a huge bonus for us, right? Okay, I mean, it really is.
Right.
That's almost worth a whole quarter or half a point in our eval process. So I guess it's kind of the main. Now, other sports, a lot of guys throw a shot, right? The discus, that kind of stuff. As far as big guys, that's really good too because those numbers obviously speak to explosive power and that kind of stuff, which is great. But if I had to choose, one sport for each, I would love all of our tackle prospects to play basketball because besides the fact that it develops it, also you can watch them play basketball and get a really good feel for how good of an athlete they are, how well they move their feet and everything. And then I would love all of our interior guys to be wrestlers.
Right. Because I don't know if you're seeing it. I've coached high school for 13, 14 years. And just every year, more and more today, just start specializing in one sport. And it's been baseball. That's been the one where they're specializing. And that's what we're battling, trying to change the numbers and this and that. And we have COVID hurt where because we didn't play till the spring. They crammed all 3 seasons from January to June, all 3 seasons into that time. Yeah. And the more you kept kicking the can down the road of, waiting to see if we could play, obviously you're going to lose kids, whether they have to go work because their parents need it
Yep.
Was, well, I'm scared of COVID, which was, true.
Yep.
And then we're just trying to recover, but more and more it's they're going to go play baseball. And then I try to tell them, and I've never talked to a baseball coach in college, and I assume they ask the same questions. Do they play multiple sports? I assume, but we all know what assuming does. So I never,
Yeah.
but I try to tell these kids, if you play multiple sports, it helps you no matter what college you go to, Division 3, 2, FCS, FBS, whatever.
Definitely.
And I just don't know why. And I've always asked college coaches, do you see more and more kids just specializing, or you're still able to find the multi-sport? But like, man, I'm seeing more and more just specializing in one, whether it's just football, just baseball.
It's funny. I've actually had for linemen, not necessarily for skill kids, but for linemen, I've actually had the moving. So obviously, in terms of recruiting linemen, different geographic. There's not a lot of linemen in South Florida, so you got to. But the South in general has none, right? It's funny. I've actually told this to. So I recruit South Florida. So my recruiting area in state, I recruit the Columbus, Ohio area, right? Okay, and I also recruit South Florida. And when I came down to recruit South Florida in the spring, because I'm a line coach, a lot of coaches are like, "Hey, coach, I got this lineman," and I said, "Listen, guys, please." Don't take the wrong way. I don't need to come to South Florida to recruit offensive line. Now, there are probably, there was probably, I think, 2 or 3, maybe 4 at different times, at most at one time, prospects that were on our board that we were evaluating from down here that were linemen. But within a 5-hour radius of our campus, we can find 3 to 4 really good line. We signed 4 in January, only one of which is outside of that 5-hour footprint. And I think all of them are significantly better than guys that we would have been able to find and sign at FIU or anywhere down here, just because of your access to them. So my point is, I've actually found more multi-sport linemen in this cycle in the Midwest than I ever found in Florida or other places. Now, we have 2 kids who are committed in the 23 class right now, both of which one plays baseball and one plays and one throws for the track team. That was not by design. It's just those are the 2 best guys that we found that wanted to come and be part of the Zips, right?
Right.
But I feel like almost every kid that I'm recruiting right now, not every kid, but most kids I'm recruiting right now on the offensive line, either also play basketball or wrestle or throw shot, or baseball, I guess, right? So.
Yeah, that's a good point, because I have a lineman, but they'll play basketball or throw, and I'm like, that's beautiful. And then in the winter they lift and do whatever and do all that. Yeah. But the more I think about it, it is wide receivers or quarterbacks that are like, well, I'm just going to do football, or they quit. Like, I'm just going to go do baseball. It's the more skilled, skill athletes that do that.
See, and down here in South Florida, you do run into more of the specialization. Guys run track, but not as much as they used to. But the reason why I think it's happening down here is because different than Ohio, different than a lot of states, it is wide open down here for 7-on-7. So from January until June, in all reality, there's a 7-on-7 tournament either in South Florida, or there's a team in South Florida traveling to play somewhere else in South Florida literally every weekend. And you're not playing with your teams, right? So like, the South Florida Express, for example, or the Immortals or the whatever, they have, players from 10, 12, 15 different high schools playing for them, and they travel all over the country and play. So a lot of those kids, can't run track because they're doing 7-on-7 year round, right? Which, it's hard to kind of argue that that's not necessarily as good as running track for them, right? Because they are running, they are playing football, and they are doing it year round. So, I would venture to say that the 7-on-7 circuit down here has almost become like a whole other sport, which has made some of those kids more multi-sport athletes, although they're really only just playing football.
Yeah, you've learned being around Ohio and then like Illinois, you can't do that in the
which was shocking to me when I heard that. I was like, really? I was like, that's great, because that's been a thing. I get why they don't do it, because it can become like AAU basketball at times, where
Mhm.
as a high school coach, you do lose a little bit of influence, well, not a little bit, a lot of influence and control over a kid's recruitment.
Yeah,
Happened down here.
there's some around in the suburbs that have their own little cell and they'll travel. So if they don't do baseball or track in the spring, a coach will organize it almost like an AAU, and they'll travel to southern states and play.
Yeah.
But that costs a lot of money, and so not everybody can do that.
See, I believe, I could be wrong on this, but I believe I was told that in Ohio, if a kid plays in a 7-on-7 team or league, whatever, that's not it's A, out of the window of sanction, and B, that's not with his team, he's immediately ineligible for the following season. I could be wrong on that, but or maybe that was the case, I'm not sure. But either way, it's really, there is nowhere near the market for 7-on-7 in Ohio as there is in other parts of the country, especially in Florida.
Yeah, I think in Illinois, you can't do anything like that if you are on a team during that season. So like if a kid was on the track team at their high school, I don't think he can go do a travel team around that. So like, because some do that in basketball, they try to do high school basketball, but then also go do something with a travel team during the same season.
Sure. Yeah.
And
Because it puts you in conflict, which makes sense. Yeah.
Right. I think in Illinois, that's the only thing. So when they do, I can't remember what the 7-on-7 group is. It's up here in the suburbs somewhere who they organize it, but they'll travel to Florida. They'll travel to, all over during the spring and play. And then people make highlight tapes out of it. I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Whatever, but none of our kids do it. I just know like your parents that can afford it do that. Cause my parents would laugh if I said, hey, I want to go do AAU basketball or go do travel baseball. They would have laughed.
Yeah.
If I would have said, yeah, give me like $4,000 to do this, they would have laughed at me. They'd be like, no, you're going to go to the high school and play, or you're going to go get a job.
Exactly.
Well, I'm going to play sports, so I'm not going to do that. Yeah, I was just curious because every coach is like seeing that more and more. So I was just curious on that multi-sport thing because I started to see it in 2015. I was a young OC and I saw it. And then the AAU baseball coaches, they skipped baseball to go to a 7-on-7 for us. He didn't play them the rest of the summer because he was mad that they missed a baseball game. So it's been a big issue. So you said like with your guys' offense, you really have to dictate recruiting for your players. Obviously I've tried to watch Coach Moorhead before. You guys will obviously be a spread team and now you're gonna be looking to run the football more than anything else, or are we looking to pass it more?
It's the offense has evolved. This is actually kind of a sidebar, but it's really neat the way our offensive staff is put together because, like I said, everyone's worked with, and in some cases played for Coach Moorhead in this system. But we've all been in the system at different points of evolution of the system. So, for example, like our tight end coach, Coach Reno Ferrari, was actually on staff with Joe way back when, right? So he was with Coach Moorhead his first time ever coordinating and kind of saw him begin to put his fingerprints on the offense and everything. And then I was with him. And then our running back coach, Coach Richardson, was with him at UConn and at Mississippi State. So he was with them when, Coach Edsel was kind of still making them do some of the two-back stuff and everything. And then also when he was at Mississippi State, when he was kind of totally, off of that string a little bit already.
Right.
I was with him at Fordham where it was really truly the first time where he had carte blanche because he was a head coach and no one could tell him what to do, right? And we did whatever we wanted to do. We were very experimental at times. And then like our quarterback coach played for him at Penn State and then worked for Mississippi State. So he's, and our receiver coach, Coach Gilbertson, was at Oregon with him most recently. So like we've literally like there's one person from every step on the way in the staff room, which is great because there are things that even Coach Moore forgets that worked that were good 8 years ago, right? That we remind, oh yeah, why was I doing that? And then, and then becomes a discussion. And it's very collective, actually, which is really cool. I mean, it'd be very easy for Joe to say, hey, listen, this is my offense, what we're doing, learn it and let's go do it. But it's become a very, very eclectic, kind of collaboration, which is awesome, right? Which is part of what makes Joe so great. But my point is this, so the offense has enough variety to it, right? And enough versatility to it that it can really kind of morph. And when I say morph, like you're not going to become a 22 personnel operation overnight. I'm not saying that, but within the structure of how the offense operates, as you mentioned, being mostly spread, right? 11, 10 personnel, a little bit of 12, obviously inside zone kind of being the main run game mover, right? And then all the variations off of that, but whatever. Depending on who your quarterback is, who your running back is, how good your receivers are, how physical your tight end is or isn't, and obviously how good you're up front in the line, you can tailor and feature certain things more or less from year to year or week to week. So for example, like in 2013, which was my second year with coach at Fordham, I think we broke out some kind of record. So in 1 year we had a running back go for almost 2,000 yards. Our quarterback threw for 4,000. We had 3 different 1,000-yard receivers, and we scored a bunch of points, right? That was even beat Temple and Army and so on and so forth. So that year, our quarterback was a kid named Michael Niebrick, who was a transfer from UConn, who broke all of Michael Vick's high school records in Virginia, right, as a high school athlete. Really good thrower, but also really good athlete. So we became a little bit more aggressive with either design quarterback runs or read element game things that would induce more quarterback runs and that kind of stuff, right? And we're really successful doing that. Almost the entire same team came back in 2014. I think we might have lost like 2 or 3 offensive linemen, but all the receivers, the tight end, we actually got better at running back because we got Chase Edmonds. But almost the entire same team came back and the quarterback. But now the quarterback had a knee injury in spring ball and was literally playing most of the year on a partially torn ACL. So obviously him running around was not going to be, the answer.
Right.
The offense became a lot more RPO driven, a lot more, controlled passing game, a lot more at the quarterback, and still was very, very explosive and successful that year as well when the conference went to playoffs and so on and so forth. So I guess my point is then that same offense goes to Penn State, and obviously you got Saquon Barkley. How many times can we manufacture the ball in Saquon's hands, right? Whether it's him playing quarterback, him playing running back, bubble screens, swing screens, whatever, right? You know what I mean? Then they go to Mississippi State, and they have Nick Fitzgerald, who's more of a Tim Tebow type of quarterback. He's not really a thrower, but he's a really good runner, right? So now it becomes more like, so the offense has the ability to kind of shape itself into what really a quarterback does best, number one, right? You know what I mean? And then who are your best players and how can we feature those guys as best possible? So to say we're going to run or throw it more, I mean, ultimately you want to be 50-50, right? You know what I mean? And it's funny because over the course of years and years and years, you feel like, man, we're throwing the ball more than we normally have. And then you go back and look at the numbers into the year and you're pretty damn close to 50-50 every year, right? So what you don't want to do in this offense, what the whole offense is predicated on, is to not run bad plays to bad looks, right? You don't want to run zone beaters into man coverage. You don't want to run man beaters into zone coverage. You don't want to run, 6-man blocking teams into 8-man fronts and vice versa, right? So that's really ultimately what the offense is designed to do, is to put you in the most advantageous play or scheme possible, given what the defense is presenting.
That's why when I grew up, we were a power I option team when I was in high school. So what did I think when I wanted to coach when I was like 15, 16? I knew I was going to coach. What did I want to run? Well, we're going to be power I option. And then I started to branch out and I said, I was a young OC, but I want to install something to give us that opportunity. Like you said, especially in high school when you don't know what you're getting.
Yep.
I make fun of wing T coaches, but it's just me stirring the pot, poking fun, whatever. But I feel like if I'm a wing T guy and all of a sudden I get some athletes and I'm like, well, I kind of want to throw it. I kind of want to run the quarterback. Now you got to switch your whole dynamic of offense. But if you come in where you kind of shotgun, kind of not, you can tweak that.
Yes.
And put yourself in that position. Like this year, I had to go back and look at triple option stuff from a spread because part of my job is how do we keep kids playing football? They want the football.
Yeah.
But they don't want to be a running back and go downhill. So how do we get them in space? How do we not just throw bubble screens? Maybe we got to motion them and pitch it to them and all that stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But since we're a spread team, we're able to tweak that and do all that stuff. Then I used to ask coaches, so do you double team on inside zone? But everybody says yes nowadays. I don't know if hardly anybody does the old traditional like step and go all the time. I think everybody double teams on inside zone all the time.
For us, we don't. So my zone infancy in coaching, and where I learned most of my zone blocking stuff. And originally, well, two people really. I played for Mike Munchak in the NFL, right?
Okay.
And when I first got into college coaching, which was in 2007 at Ole Miss, Alex Gibbs was actually out of work. He was in one of those cycles,
Mhm.
and he had become really close with Coach Ed Orgeron, who was the head coach at Ole Miss that year, because of their time when he was visiting SC with Monty Kiffin and Lane, those guys. So Coach Gibbs spent, I think, almost all of training camp with us. A couple weeks before training camp, kind of getting us ready for training camp, and then would, I think, visit maybe once or twice throughout the course of the season. So imagine I was a 24, 5-year-old, GA coaching tight ends, and Alex Gibbs was like part of our staff pretty much.
Right.
So a lot of my zone, inside or outside zone, a lot of my zone teaching principles really have their root in Alex Gibbs and his covered, uncovered principles. So everything we do is based off of essentially covered, uncovered. Now we've kind of tweaked it a little bit and use different terminology. We've gone to more of a stoplight system now, where it's like green, yellow, red, which I stole that from Rich Skrosky, who was the OC at FIU when I first got there. But it's the same, just different way of saying the same thing, right? So we don't necessarily say, hey, we're going to double team more or less, whatever. The defense honestly dictates that based off alignment and movement in our reality. So I'm not sure that's your question or not, but yeah.
Oh, no, it does. Because when I first started this podcast back in 2020, that was one of the questions, because I'm still young, I guess, essentially. I'm 31, so I'm still and I do high school. And I always said, you guys double team. And some say no, depending on what the defense is doing, we kind of just want to step and go. Some said, nope, we don't double team.
Yeah.
And I said, for me, like you said, I do uncovered. If they present itself to double team, we're going to double team.
Yeah, exactly.
Or it's up to the lineman. If a lineman goes, I can do it by myself, they don't call it. I give it up to them. Your initial step is talk to each other, double team. If you think you can do it by yourself, then you move on. Then you do that, go up to the linebacker.
And to your point, there are certain systems that are really, really far on either side of that pendulum, right? So when I first got to FIU in 2020, Rich Skrosky was the offensive coordinator, and he's now with Duke. Rich comes from that John Strollo, Wake Forest, which was at Bowling Green before, and Ball State, whatever. I know Siassi's part of that tree because he GA'd under Rich and those guys before I got there. Where essentially leaving the line of scrimmage was the worst thing you could possibly do running inside zone, right? Everything was at the line of scrimmage. You never pierced. You always stayed there, and it was 5 guys moving as one, and it was a lot more lateral than it was ever vertical. And they had a lot of success before I got there doing that, and we did it in 2020. We were the ball pretty well in 2022. Actually, we had good running backs, which helps. But that was my first time ever experiencing that extreme of one side of it. And then we had a new coordinator come in next year. We kind of changed and weren't as far onto that side of things. And look, watch Wake, because that's what Wake Forest does, right? Wake Forest scores 50 points a game and do it that way. So it's like I tell campers when we have summer camps, right? Guys come from high schools, and sometimes we teach things that maybe their high school coaches don't teach or is contrary. So guys, there are so many ways to be right and so many ways to do things in this game, right? I mean, people have won championships running the triple option, running, 2-back power, running spread. I mean, who cares? It's not about what the plays you run. It's more so about, the consistency in coaching and that kind of stuff. So, but yeah, anyways.
Yeah, because the high school I was talking about, where we were undefeated, it was that when I showed up, they said that's how I used to run inside zone, was everybody step to the right, you go up, whatever, they're moving. Then he goes, well, then guys were coming through the line of scrimmage and everything else. So he went to that double team, and it was beautiful. It worked. And so I took that with me, and I was like, we're going to double team. We're going to do this. But my problem was I talked to too much college coaches, and I'm figuring out what they do. So my thought was, I want to do what they're doing. So that way, if I have a kid that does go on to play any sort of level of college football, maybe some things I say are similar to what they do.
Yeah.
And then coming into this year, I had to abandon it because I'm well, I love using hand inside if you're double teaming. I had to go to old school, get down into them and your shoulder and this and that,
Sure.
which is not what everybody does. And maybe that's selfish of me, but I was like, you know what? This is best for the kids. This is best for our program. And, I try to put them in a position to play college football. And they're going to go to play college football and say, well, our coach was an idiot. We were putting our shoulder into him, double teaming and this and that. And we're not using our hand as much. And I'm going to look like an idiot. But that's why I ask coaches all these questions, because I take notes. I try to implement that. And then it bothers me when I can't do it, because I'm like, this is the way you're supposed to do it. Because I walked on to play 1 year of college football, and that was one of the first things I learned was how to use your hands, how to do this, how to do that. And then now I can't do it. But anyway, that's my little rant on that. But yeah, the double teaming thing was huge. And then this year's my first year doing wide zone. So it's, as you can imagine, it's going great when you first install it for
Oh
us.
yeah.
It's fantastic to implement. And then I'm also changing my skip. I use a skip pull on power. I'm no longer
Okay.
doing that. I'm going to shuffle and
Yeah, we've kind of we've. I'm not sure I ever did skip pole, to be honest with you, but we did something similar to that. But it's we've not skip pulled in years. Yeah.
that's all I ever knew. And then I think it was Siasi where the first time I I've seen people do it, but when I talked to him, he was like the first guy
Yeah.
to do that.
And it's funny because he changed his pull technique after spending time with us at FIU. So to your point, during COVID, when they got pushed back to a spring season, right, at Bryant. So there was I think one of the deals was there was a month. There were 2 different months in the fall where every employee was essentially furloughed, right? Where they had to take a month vacation or something just to keep the budget floated. So he went and spent one of those. Actually, he spent 1 whole month or a 2-week window during training camp with us in 2020. And then he came back and spent another week or 2 with us towards the end of the season. And as I'm sure you got to see when you talk to him, he's brilliant. I mean, Steve is really sharp, man. So we were back and forth and talking about stuff, and he liked a lot of how we teach our pullers and stuff. We call it a sickle pull, and so he kind of, but again, to his credit, kind of took some pieces of it, but kind of also morphed a little bit, made it his own, and make sense to him and his players and how they do things. And now they run it. They're running it almost more so like when you watch North Dakota State, those guys, how they run, because they're so short and shuffling. And it's funny because I'm not saying that's why, but ironically, they changed their pulls, their pull path and technique. And hell, they became much more of a gap scheme team this year all of a sudden, as opposed to a zone scheme team, which is great, for Bryant, because that's going back to the old days.
Right.
So yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, because I think I went away. I didn't do it at first because people were telling me that's A gap power. So if you're not always going to be A gap power, don't shuffle, and I just stick to your skip pull. And I just was like, okay, whatever. I like zone anyway, so I'm the guy that's like, if we don't run power as much, cool, it's fine. But then as the skip pull wasn't working, or we're not staying square, we're not seeing the gap as soon as I should, or we overshoot it. So if the gap is A gap, because I'm the guy that's like, it's not always going to be A gap, it's not always going to be B gap. I don't know where it's going to be. That's just my philosophy, because it's down blocking and we don't know where it's going to be. So we would overshoot it. We would do this, we would do that. So I saw the shuffle and I said, screw it. It might hit A gap, it might shuffle, hit B gap.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Yes, he was the guy. Like I put on Twitter, I said, who does this? And I knew he did, but I just wanted to see. Immediately he sent me that film of his of like, oh, this is what we do. And I'm like, okay, so here I am asking questions, and that's what I'm going to do. And then I've almost told our guys inside zone, I almost explain it in gap terms, which is stupid, because I'm like, we got to make sure the gap's protected, guys, too. That's part of your being covered. If it's a shade right here to the way we're going, that's your guy.
Sure. Yeah.
And then they go, well, what if there's a guy on the inside shade and a guy walks down, like a linebacker walks down? I'm like, well, you better hit that linebacker. Another guy's going to hit this guy.
Yeah. That's honestly where I think, and I never had a discussion with Coach Skrosky about so I mentioned the stoplight system, right? So when I first, and this goes back to what they're doing at Wake Forest now, right? How they're coaching their guys. So they coach them in terms like the covered, uncovered, whatever. To them, it's also about pace, right? So how fast do I need to go? Well, so that's what they speak in green, yellow, red, right? So if a linebacker's walk down or you're covered, if you're play side gap or zone, whatever
Mhm.
is threatened, right, with a 3 technique, a play side shade, a walk, whatever, you're green. You got to go and cover
Right.
his ass up, right? You know what I mean? And then if essentially your backside shoulder is threatened or covered, there's nothing in your front side, then you're yellow, right? You want to go, but you want to go slow because, to your point, you want to create that double team and not just leave your buddy there, right?
Right.
And then red is if you're uncovered, you don't go anywhere really. So I liked the conciseness of that and the way it was able to be very, to me, it's very visual friendly, right? You know what I mean? For young guys. So we've actually stolen the whole stoplight coaching kind of, and now our footwork is starting to, so hey, if you're green, this is your footwork. If you're yellow, this is your footwork. If you're, now we don't really speak in terms of red, because to me, red really talks to like that Wake Forest pace, which we don't do. So for us, it's more so like, green, yellow, or uncovered, right? It's kind of more so the our verbiage with it. But to me, that kind of would help alleviate some of what you're talking about. Like, well, yeah, I'm yellow, but the linebacker walks on. Well, you become green. And where that's also helped us a lot too is it's helped us be able to talk to our guys about post snap movement, right? Like, hey, you can be yellow and then become green on your first step because that 2-eye crosses your face, play side, or they've run a pirate stunt and now the ends in the B gap, or you can be uncovered. So like literally like a huge portion of what we drill on a daily basis in our inside zone stuff is green footwork, yellow footwork, and then more so, and then green becoming yellow, yellow becoming green to yellow to green, right? Like, your guard on a 3 technique play side, and then with a pirate stump, so the 3 and the 5 both reduce down. Well, I'm green pre-snap, I'm yellow on my first step, and now I'm back to green on my second step. Like, that shit happens fast, So, right. But it's a lot easier to say green, yellow, green, or whatever, and they can see that, and it kind of sparks a visual in their mind, as opposed to having to explain the whole process of, hey, they're running a pirate stunt, whatever. Like, I don't know how I would say that. This has become a lot more kind of catchy, I guess, almost like a buzz term, for our guys. And they get it, which is all that matters at the end of the day, right? So
right. I wish I would have talked to you before the summer because I would have used that. That's awesome. It's too late now. I'm already in it. I can't go in there Monday and be like, all right, we're going to change it to this, because they would be like, Coach Steve, what did you do this weekend?
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Yeah. I wish I would have talked to you before. That's awesome. Because last year I had to tell them, if it's a backside shade, you're uncovered, because we're kind of going the opposite way.
Yeah.
But then what started to happen was they'd freak out and like come really down hard, and it'd open it up, and the linebacker shot out. So now I'm like, you're still covered, which I guess for you might almost be like a yellow, because it's like you're kind of
exactly.
But then I started to do the scooch, where like the backside guy is going to scooch over and use that technique. I got that from Coach Rudolph at Ohio. Like, he told me that, and
that's kind of what they were doing at FI when I first got there, and we did it the first year too. We're not doing that as much here at Akron now, for the most part. But I know a lot of people do that. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. He had told me about that scooch, and I was like, I'm going to do it. And he goes, no, don't do it, because this was like in August. And I said, why? He goes, it's too late. You have to work on that in the summer. And I said, okay. Well, being the dumb idiot I am, about week 2 of our practices, I said, all right, we're going to do it. So we start scooching, and I was like, yeah, I should have waited, because that takes a lot of practice, a lot of knowing and understanding when to use it. And but again, I got to the school in 2020. They never load step before. Like, it was just old school fire out. And our head coach now, he was the old line coach, but he played linebacker in college, so he was more of like, just go and hit them, which was great. But now I'm like, now I got to teach you how to load step, which gives you that patience, like you said, to see like where it's coming and then go. And
that's one thing. Like when we were, I think it was between our first year and our second year at FIU, maybe we did our GAs did a study on just because it felt like a conference would say, and I'm sure the math is probably very similar, like the name of the game for D-line was movement, right? And you get so much post-snap movement, right? Whether it be single reduction, double reduction, whatever it is. And it was crazy. So in I guess it was the 2020 season, I guess it was, or maybe the 19 season, 78% of the time, wherever the 3 tech was when the ball was snapped, he was not there once the ball was snapped, right? So essentially there was some kind of a reduction, right, to a 3 tech each side, whether it be single or double, on 78% of the snaps, and that was just against FIU, which I'm sure would be the same against anywhere else. It really, at everything that we've done, that we do now, the run and pass, everything we do now, like before we present to the kids and talk about it and everything, has to be okay. Not only is it sound against like base defense, is it sound against odd defense, is it sound against movement, because you're not. I mean, very very few people are going to have. I mean, even the defenses that have the D linemen who are going to sit there and play gaps don't play gaps, right? I mean, so that's just not what they do. So it's really it's good because from a coaching standpoint, it's forced us to be very, very strategic, and have our bases covered before we present to the kids. Because this may be great against a stationary 3 tech, but if it's bad against movement, then we shouldn't do it, right?
Right. Because I do this all the time. What do we draw as offensive guys? I always put a 5 technique, 1 technique, 3 technique, 5 technique. This is a perfect world of blocking.
Yeah.
But like our defense this year, they're going to be more head up guys. They're going to be do this. And I'm like, okay, so now we got to go against this, and this.
Yeah.
Do our rules match this front? And do you understand that they match this? Coach, I'm taking all your time. I'm trying to wrap it up for you so you can enjoy your vacation.
No, you're good.
You going into Akron and being to the MAC, there's a lot of great run game coordinators and O-line coaches, and now you're a part of it. Like, are you guys excited for that battle each and every week? Because like I said, I talked about Rudolph. He's at Ohio. I know the Kent State coaches because Sean Lewis was at Eastern Illinois when I had spring ball out there when he was there with Babers. So I know what they're doing. How exciting is it to be a part of that group now? You're there, all those great O-line coaches, run game coordinators, you're a part of that now. Is that exciting? Is that, all right, you're not going against each other, but like you can see what they do and maybe steal some things, or they're going to steal some things from you. Like it's really exciting. Like the MAC's great. Like there's a ton of great coaches.
I think the MAC, and this is not just coaches in general, I think the MAC in terms of G5 conferences, right? I think it probably has the best setup and the best the best identity, I guess, right? I mean, like the MAC, like what you're going to get when you put in a MAC game, right? You're going to see, right? I mean, first of all, the whole MACtion thing with Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday games late in the year on ESPN and NFL Network and so on and so forth. It's awesome, right? It's so much cleaner and user friendly than Conference USA was for us, like at FIU for sure. So just being a part of the MAC, I'm really excited about just that alone, right? Just like having the ability to say, hey guys, like we're the only show in town. If you're watching college football on Wednesday night, October, whatever day it is, right? You're watching us play against Miami, Ohio, or Bowling Green, or Toledo, whatever it is. So I'm really, really, really excited about that. And having worked with and for guys who have played in or coached in the MAC, all you hear about all the time is, the parity in the conference, the coaching in the conference, the competitiveness. So to that extent, I'm really, really excited about being a part of the conference. I really am. It was really cool going through spring recruiting in May, because having a portion of Ohio and also working camps, Ohio State camp and that kind of stuff, right? Having a chance to meet a lot of these other coaches. I met Coach Rudolph at a high school in Columbus, actually, in May. Guys from Toledo staff who I knew before, or I met recently, Kent State, as you mentioned, Bowling Green, so on and so forth. So it's been really, really cool to kind of put a face, right, and meet some of these guys, because you hear about some of the great things that they are and have been doing in conference play. So yeah, to your point, I'm really, really excited to kind of see, what we can bring to the conference, right? You know what I mean? This offense has obviously been successful at a bunch of other conferences, right? To different levels, with FCS level and the SEC and the Pac-10 and the Big Ten and so on, or I guess Pac-12, sorry. Well, now it might be exactly right.
Might be the Pac-8. It might be the Pac-8 eventually.
Yeah, exactly. So and not just what I can do, because that's a very small part of the puzzle, obviously, but what can our players do? And can we put them in position to be successful? Because ultimately, this is one of the coolest parts of taking over a job. And it's actually very, very similar. And it's funny because myself and Coach Moorhead, who are the only ones who are on staff now, who are at Fordham, we draw the comparison almost daily about what we're taking over at Akron and how similar it is to what we walked into at Fordham. So to give you a little bit of background, so at Fordham, we got there in 2012. They were 1-10 the previous year, which is exactly what Akron's record was last year. I don't know how many games they had won the previous 3 or 4 years, but they had not had a winning season in their previous like 6 or 8 years. I think they had I think one winning season the previous decade. Right, that was when Coach Clausen was there before he went to Bowling, or I guess Richmond. And so it was a program that had been downtrodden for a while. Great, like tradition, Vince Lombardi, the Four Horsemen, all that kind of stuff, right? The 7 blocks of granite, whatever, but it had really fallen on hard times recently. And our first year there, there's probably more positives going for you as a program at Akron now than there was at Fordham our first year there in terms of facilities and support and administration and recruiting area, that kind of stuff, right? But and of course the transfer portal, which wasn't a thing back then, right? But we took that team, and gave them structure, culture, development, so on and so forth. And the next year we won 6-5, which was the biggest turnaround in college football at the FCS level that year. By no means a 6-5 going to win your coach of the year or anything, but from a team that had not had a winning season in the previous, like literally not one player on that roster had ever been a part of a winning season in college, and they won 6-5 that next year. And honestly, probably won some games they shouldn't have won. Probably lost. There was nail biters to get to 6-5. Right, they had to really grit their way through it. The next 2 and 3 years, 12-2, 11-3, back-to-back conference championships, all that kind of stuff. Right, top 5 rankings. And that was with a lot of the same players in all reality that were on that 1-10 team before we got there. So all what my ultimate goal is for our program short term and for these players is that, right? I want our guys to experience like a winning season, right? To walk around campus and walk around the community, go back to their high schools, over break, wearing Akron stuff and have pride in that, right? Not like, well, I settled for Akron, because we didn't settle for Akron. Coach Moorhead could have taken, a couple Power 5 head jobs if he really wanted to, but he wanted to come back to this part of the country. He wanted to come somewhere we could build something to be part of a rebuild. And he chose Akron. He didn't settle for Akron. And we all did the same thing with him, right? You know what I mean? And we want our players to feel the same way. Right. So what better way to do that than to go out there and have some success, win games, do it the right way, be proud in the way that you're doing it. Right. You know what I mean? And then go and the one awesome part of the MAC that we didn't talk about was some of these bowl tie-ins are awesome, by the way. I mean, have an opportunity to go play in the Bahamas or in Boca Raton or Clearwater or St. Pete, Florida, or wherever. I mean, there's great bowl. I mean, obviously Detroit's cool too, but there's some really, really cool bowl tie-ins this conference has that we can be a part of, that Akron has been a part of in the past, and it should be part of going forward. So, I mean, how awesome for our guys to go from winning, 3 games in 3 years, and then come back in a year or two, have a chance to go play, a team from the American or from a Power 5 conference or whatever in somewhere in Florida or in the Bahamas or Arizona, who cares where it is, right? But, get flown out somewhere for a week, get bowl per diem, get bowl gifts, have that cool experience, and play one more game with your guys, right? Which is also a part of the fun of a bowl process. So that's what we're excited for, ultimately.
Yeah, it's exciting to rebuild a program. It's always exciting to do that.
It is.
Done it a couple of times up here in the suburbs, like you said, coaching a school of 4,000 kids, and some of those kids have rough home lives, and that's all they needed in life was that football program. But they only won 1 game in like 3 years.
Yeah.
And then they went 4-5.
Yeah.
Like, they're so close to being successful. So that's a fun thing. And it's cool that you've been a part of it and Coach Moorhead's been a part of it. So what it's going to take.
Sure.
And that's cool to sell to the kids. Like, we know what it's going to take. So on the train and we'll be there. And the other coaches too, like, we know.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. And, to wrap it up, the MAC's going to be, with you guys going there to turn that around, the MAC's just going to be tough. It's going to be tough week in and week out. And like you said, we'll all be watching Tuesday. What are the high school coaches doing? We're going to go home at 6:37 at night. Oh, MAC action. We're going to turn it off.
Exactly. I said, I think the conference, obviously the TV drives the ship, right? You know what I mean? But I think that this conference like does as good a job of any G5 conference, if not better, of marketing itself to its audience, right? You know what I mean? And unapologetically, like, hey, we are Mac. Like, if you follow the Mac conference's Twitter handle, it's like hashtag Mac. Like, that's like Maction is their Twitter handle. It's not even like it's a part. It is a thing, So it's really cool. And everyone keeps talking about. I've always heard for years and years about how much parity there is in this conference, right? I mean, like our division, the East, has had a different team win it, I think, the last 3 or 4 years, every year. The team that won the league outright last year was NIU, and they were 0 the year before that, so that doesn't give you, any kind of, hope, for what this program can do, in the near future. I don't know what it does. So
I don't know. Yeah. NIU's only like 40 minits down the road for
yeah.
But don't worry, I'm a fan of you now too. So don't worry. Even though I'm 45 minutes. I'm a fan of a lot of schools in the MAC, because all you coaches are great to talk to us on these podcasts and everything. Like, that's another great thing about coaches, and not just the MAC, but the MAC. I've talked to more MAC coaches than probably everywhere else.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, I think when you get to having been at the Power 5 level and stuff, I think like there are different kind of coaches, obviously, with different personalities in this profession, right? You have some guys that have had a little bit of a charmed existence, right? They either played or got a foot in the door as a GA or something, as an analyst at one of these big time programs, and then kind of never left, right? And they've been in one school or with one guy and have fallen around a bunch of places. So they think the whole world operates like that, right? And everyone's kind of beneath them a little bit, and they think that they somehow have the secret formula that no one else has, because they've been able to do that, right? I think the cool thing about the MAC and other conferences too, and even some coaches that have risen to, those Power 5 big time jobs, that came through the ranks, right, of the D2 FCS high school, the MAC, whatever. They understand that there are really good coaches that never get a chance to coach college football, right? I'm sure you've been a part of that, right? There are really, really good coaches. I mean, some of the best coaches I've worked with were at the FCS level, right? There are really good coaches that either because of opportunity or because of who they know or because they weren't really looking for it, never had a chance. So, and there's also really, really, really bad coaches at some of these blue blood programs too now, because of, who their dad is or their resume, whatever it is, right? So my point is, I think that, Coach Moore has a really cool saying. He says, take your job seriously, not yourself. Right. I think at some programs, some people sometimes take themselves way too seriously. I don't think you have that problem in the MAC, because you can't, because you're in the MAC. Right. So, we're all just trying to find a first down somewhere. So,
right. No, sometimes there's a disconnect between what high school coaches don't understand, what college coaches go through. You guys have a tough job, even though some of it might be easier than what high school coaches do. The amount of recruiting you guys have to do, the changes you guys have had to go through with the portal and this and this and this, like, it's a lot of changes. Like you said, how hard you had to recruit doing a program. But then there's some college coaches that don't understand what high school coaches go through, and there's that disconnect. And that's why I like doing this podcast and talking to college coaches, to rebuild that connection of, like, I understand what you guys go through and we appreciate what you do, learn from you guys. And then hopefully maybe some college coaches that don't understand, oh, high school coaches have to wash all the clothes, they have to line the fields, they have to deal with parents, they have to do this. And maybe they can't coach in college because they have a family and they weren't going to do that GA job for $1,000 or $2,000,
exactly.
And that's why I appreciate anybody that comes on and spends their vacation time talking to me is good in my book. So that's how I'll wrap this up. I appreciate you. I have to be a fan of Akron. Now I'm a fan of every MAC school, but now I have to be a fan.
We'll make room for you. We'll make room for you on the bandwagon.
Yeah, make room for me. And if I ever go to Ohio, I'll swing right by in. And
absolutely. Come on, Matt.
But I appreciate you coming on. Enjoy the rest of your vacation. Guy, what's your Twitter? So people can.
I am at Coach_J_Rod, ROD.
Okay, everybody go follow him. Check out Akron this year. I'll be watching that offense and seeing what goes on. I like to steal from people, so I watch and see. what I can do.
Hopefully we score some points because the first downs will make it worthwhile.
Oh, I think you will. I think you will. But I appreciate you guys. Go follow him. Thank you guys for watching or listening, and we'll see you guys next time.